Well, hello there, my sleepy friends. Close your eyes if you'd like, or let them grow heavy. There's no rush here. Tonight, we're going somewhere soft and familiar, back to the rooftops of a world painted in warm shadows and gentle rain, where a raccoon in a blue hat moved like a whisper through the night. This is the story of Sly Cooper. A thief, yes, but one with a code, one with a heart, and one with a family that no matter how far apart they drifted, always found their way back to each other. It's a long story, full of quiet moments and grand adventures, told across 4 beautiful games and many years. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and let the world of Sly Cooper come to you, gently, like a memory you forgot you had. Our story begins, as so many do, with a loss. Sly Cooper was just a small child, barely old enough to understand what was happening, when a group of villains called the Fiendish Five broke into his home. They were after something very specific, the Thievius Raccoonus, an ancient book that had been passed down through the Cooper family line for generations. It was no ordinary book. It was a collection of secrets, thieving techniques, stealth arts, and hard-earned wisdom compiled by every master thief in Sly's long ancestry. The Fiendish Five took the book apart, dividing its pages among themselves and scattered into the world. And Sly's father, the man who was supposed to teach him everything, was taken away from him that night. Sly grew up in an orphanage, but he wasn't alone. He made 2 friends there who would stay with him for the rest of his life. Bentley, a gentle and brilliant turtle who became the brains of the group, and Murray, a warm-hearted hippopotamus who became their driver, their muscle, and one of the most loyal souls you could ever hope to meet. By the time they were young adults, the 3 of them had formed the Cooper Gang, and Sly had made a quiet, steady promise to himself. He would find the Fiendish Five, reclaim the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus, and honor his father's memory. Their first target was Raleigh the Frog, a bloated aristocrat who lurked aboard a massive mechanical ship somewhere in the misty waters of a place called Mesa City. Raleigh was soggy and self-important, surrounded by his own sense of grandeur, but Sly moved through his ship like smoke, slipping past guards, leaping across platforms, collecting clues and keys one careful step at a time. In the end, Raleigh fell. Next came Mugshot, a brutish bulldog with more muscles than sense, who had turned a desert town called Mesa City into his own personal fortress. His gym was a maze of neon and danger. But again, Sly was patient. He moved through the shadows. He found his way. And Mugshot, for all his bluster, couldn't stop what he couldn't catch. Then there was Ms. Ruby, a crocodile deep in the swamps of Haiti, who practiced a strange and eerie voodoo. Her domain was all moss and fog and the sound of distant drums. It was one of the more unsettling places the gang had visited. But Sly pressed on, step by careful step, until Ms. Ruby too was defeated. The Panda King came after that, a fireworks master in the mountains of China, cold and proud, who used his craft not for celebration, but for destruction. His fortress was wreathed in snow and exploding light. Sly had to climb through all of it to reach him. And reach him he did. Finally, there was the leader of the Fiendish Five, Clockwork, an ancient owl consumed so thoroughly by hatred and jealousy of the Cooper bloodline that he had replaced every part of himself with machine. He had lived for centuries, sustained by his obsession, and he had waited a very long time for this confrontation. The battle against Clockwork was the hardest thing Sly had ever faced. But when it was over, when the last gear had gone still and the last light had faded, Sly stood in the wreckage, holding the recovered pages of the Thievius Raccoonus. It wasn't quite what he had expected that moment. The book was his again, but his father was still gone. Still, there was something else too, something that settled quietly in his chest as he stood with Bentley and Murray beside him. A sense of purpose, a sense of who he was. He was a Cooper, and the Cooper line endured. Some time had passed since the defeat of Clockwork. The world had moved on, as worlds do, but Sly Cooper had not forgotten the mechanical owl. In fact, he had gone back to the museum where Clockwork's remains were being stored for study, only to find that they were gone. Every last piece, scattered and stolen. This was a problem, because Clockwork's parts were dangerous. Infused with something ancient and hateful, they had a way of corrupting whoever held them, and someone was collecting them. That someone turned out to be the Claw Gang, a loose alliance of criminals, each of whom had gotten their hands on a different piece of the owl. There was Dimitri, a vain and eccentric lizard who had turned his nightclub into an art forgery operation. Rajan, a tiger who fancied himself a gentleman, but ran a spice empire built on cruelty. The Contessa, a sharp and manipulative spider who hid her schemes behind the walls of a rehabilitation center. Jean Bisson, a lumbering bison from a forgotten era, obsessed with progress and expansion. And at the top of it all, Arpeggio, a small, frail parrot with enormous ambitions. What the Cooper gang didn't know at first was that there was someone else involved, someone close. Her name was Carmelita Fox, an Interpol inspector who had been chasing Sly for years, not just out of duty, but out of something more complicated. A mix of frustration, admiration, and a connection neither of them quite knew what to do with. Carmelita was fierce and determined, and she never stopped coming after him. But there was also someone else, Nayla, a tiger, who presented herself as Carmelita's partner. Nayla was charming and helpful, and seemingly on the right side of things. She was, of course, not. The gang moved through Europe and Asia, dismantling the Claw Gang one piece at a time. Paris first, where Dimitri's forgery operation was hidden beneath the glow of black lights and the thump of music. Then a beautiful, rain-soaked India, where Rajan's palace and jungle compound held some of the most memorable moments of the entire series. The gang dressing up, infiltrating a party, stealing a gem right out from under a ballroom full of criminals. They traveled to Prague, where the Contessa's facility was cold and austere, built on a hilltop like something out of a dream you're not entirely sure was pleasant. And then to Canada, where Jean Bison's logging empire spread across a frozen landscape, and the air smelled of pine and danger. Through all of it, Nayla's true nature slowly revealed itself. She wasn't helping anyone but herself. She wanted Clockwork's power for her own purposes. Specifically, she intended to merge with Clockwork's framework herself, to become something immortal, to become Nayla Clockwork. In the end, she got her wish, for a moment, but Clockwork's hatred was not something that could be tamed or directed. It consumed her instead. And when the dust settled, it was Bentley who found a way to destroy the Clockwork parts once and for all, every last one, so that nothing of that ancient, poisonous machine could ever return. But the victory had a cost. In the chaos of the final confrontation, Bentley was hurt, badly. He would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. It was a quiet, heavy moment, the kind that doesn't announce itself with drama. It just settles over everything like snow. And yet the gang stayed together, because that's what they did. That's who they were. Oh, and Carmelita. In the aftermath, Sly did something unexpected. He let her find him, told her his memory was gone, that he didn't know who he was. It wasn't entirely true, but it gave them both something, a pause, a breath, a chance to be near each other without the chase in the way. She believed him, at least for a while, or maybe she chose to. Let's talk about legacy for a moment, about what it means to carry a name, not as a burden, but as a gift. The Cooper Vault was a place Sly had known about his whole life, somewhere deep in the mountains of a place called Caney Island. Generations of Cooper thieves had hidden their greatest treasures. Sly's ancestors, the ones whose techniques filled the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus, had all contributed something to that vault. It was a monument to the family line, locked away and waiting. Dr. M had been waiting longer. Once a partner of Sly's father, Dr. M had spent years trying to break into the vault himself, driven by a festering resentment, the belief that he had done the real work while Sly's father took all the credit. He'd built an entire compound around the island. Getting in was going to require more than just the three of them, and so Sly Cooper did something that felt very right for who he was. He assembled a team. He went out into the world and found people. A demolitions expert named Panda King. Yes, the same Panda King who had once been his enemy, now humbled and seeking purpose, his daughter in danger, and his pride quietly set aside. There was the Guru, an ancient marsupial master from the Australian outback, who moved through the world in a way that was more spiritual than physical. The geisha Penelope joined them too, a young, sharp mouse who had a gift for mechanics and remote-controlled gadgets, and who would later become important to Bentley in ways neither of them expected, and Captain Lafouille, a fearsome pirate whose story intersected with theirs in the waters of a treacherous sea. The team traveled to places that felt like they came from different dreams. The canals of Venice, where disguises and gondolas and the sound of water carried the adventure forward. The Dutch windmills and damp fields of Holland, alive with a kind of storybook danger. The deep, spiritual silence of an Australian landscape that felt older than time. A pirate's cove tossed by storm and salt. Each location held its own challenge. Each new member of the team brought something unique, and slowly, carefully, the pieces came together. Meanwhile, something was happening between Sly and Carmelita that had been building for a long time. She had come back into his life. The amnesia story had run its course, and they found themselves, once again, circling each other. Partners in moments, adversaries in others. But there was something real there, underneath everything. And by the end of this story, it would finally, gently come to the surface. Dr. M proved to be a difficult and haunted villain. His anger was old and deep. He had spent so much of himself on his obsession with the vault that there was little left of whoever he had once been. When the final confrontation came, it was Sly who faced him, not with hatred, but with something almost like sorrow, for what had been lost, for what M had thrown away. The vault was opened. The treasures were real. The legacy of the Cooper family stretched back further than Sly had ever fully understood. Thieves going back centuries, each one remarkable in their own way. And then, in the sky above Cane Island, something happened. A battle, an explosion. Sly was gone. Carmelita found only his cane. She held it for a long time. Back in Paris, she set up a life. She went back to work at Interpol. She kept his cane nearby, and sometimes, late at night, she thought about the raccoon with the blue hat and the gentle smirk, and she wondered. The rest of the gang had their own paths. Bentley threw himself into work, as he always did, grief channeled into purpose. Murray became a celebrated racing driver, roaring around tracks under a different name. The Team Cooper van painted and gleaming. They had all moved on, mostly, but something wasn't quite finished yet. Time has a way of pulling things back together. It had been a while. Bentley had been living quietly, working on something extraordinary in secret, a time machine. He had built it piece by piece, carefully, the way he did everything. And when it was ready, he reached out to Murray. The two of them came back together, and they set about finding Sly. They found him in Paris. He had been living there, some version of living at least. The amnesia he had pretended to have once upon a time had, somewhere along the way, become something closer to real. He had lost pieces of himself. He was there, but not quite whole. But the gang was back, and that, it turned out, was enough to start with. The reason for the time machine revealed itself quickly. The Thievius Raccoonus, the precious Cooper family book, was being destroyed. Pages were disappearing from it in real time because someone was moving through history itself and erasing Sly's ancestors. If the ancestors were gone, their contributions to the book would vanish. If the book vanished, the Cooper legacy would be unwritten. Someone was trying to erase the Cooper family from time. That someone turned out to be a villain called Le Paradox, a French skunk with a history all his own, elegant, resentful, and meticulous. He had learned that his own family's criminal legacy had been overshadowed for generations by the Coopers, and he intended to fix that in the most dramatic way possible by going back through time and eliminating each Cooper ancestor, replacing their history with his own. And so the gang traveled to feudal Japan, where Ryoichi Cooper, a master ninja, lean and precise and wonderful, was being framed and imprisoned. His sushi restaurant shuttered, his art of silent movement at risk of being lost to history. The Japan of this era felt like a painting come to life, all mist and lantern light, and the weight of an ancient code of honor, to medieval England, where Bob Cooper, a round and surprisingly acrobatic knight, had been frozen in ice by Le Paradox's agents. England felt huge and cold and full of castle walls and muddy courtyards, a place where honor and ambition clashed in ways that echoed across centuries. They went to the American frontier, the era of cowboys and dust and wide open skies, where Tennessee Kid Cooper, a quick draw artist with a gift for rail walking and cane tricks, was in trouble with the law. Tennessee was charming and loose-limbed and a little reckless, the way people get when they're very good at something and they know it. Then to ancient Arabia, where Salim al-Kupar, one of the greatest thieves in Cooper history, moved through a world of golden dunes and towering minarets, his 40 thieves scattered and his legend under threat. And finally, to prehistoric times, where Bob, an ancestor so ancient that he predated written language, lived among glaciers and enormous creatures, and where the gap between Sly and the very beginnings of his family line finally closed. Through all of it, Bentley was brilliant and warm, and quietly carrying the weight of leadership with more grace than he gave himself credit for. Murray was loyal and strong and funny, and he kept the van running and the heart of the team beating. Carmelita joined them. Of course she did. She always found her way back. She fought alongside them, this time not as a pursuer, but as something that felt more honest, a partner. And Sly, slowly across all that time and all those ancestors, something was returning to him. Not just memories, but something harder to name. A sense of continuity, of belonging to something larger than himself. The final confrontation with Le Paradox took place in the skies above Paris in a blimp, because of course it did. Le Paradox was defeated. The timeline was preserved. The Cooper ancestors were safe in their proper places across the centuries. But then, at the very end, in the moments after the victory, Sly was pulled somewhere, back through time, accidentally, to ancient Egypt. He was gone again, and the screen faded with the suggestion, just the suggestion, that this wasn't the end, that somewhere in ancient Egypt, a raccoon in a blue hat was about to begin a new chapter. And so we come to the edge of what we know. Sly Cooper's story isn't finished, not really. It's been waiting, patient and quiet, the way the best things wait, for someone to pick it back up. The world that Sucker Punch created and that Sansaru carried forward is still out there, somewhere, full of rooftops and rain and the soft gleam of a cane against the dark. But what we have is already something beautiful. A boy who lost his family and found a new one. A turtle who built not just machines, but a life, piece by careful piece. A hippopotamus who drove the van and held the group together with his steadiness and his warmth. An inspector who chased a thief across half the world and found, somewhere along the way, that the line between pursuing someone and caring about them is thinner than it looks. Ancestors who lived in the pages of a book and who turned out to be real, vivid and specific and full of personality, stretching back through every era, every corner of the world, every kind of midnight. The Thievius Raccoonus, the Cooper vault, the cane, worn smooth by generations of hands. These are quiet things when you think about them. They don't shout, they just endure, just like Sly Cooper, wherever he is right now, somewhere in ancient Egypt, probably causing trouble in the gentlest way possible. He's okay. He always is. So let your breathing slow a little more. Let the rooftops of Paris and the mist of feudal Japan drift through the softer parts of your mind. Let the sound of rain on cobblestones and the distant rumble of the Cooper gang's van carry you somewhere easy and warm. The story will be here when you wake up. It always is. Good night.